it's also interesting you mentioned about happiness, which got me thinking from a kind of therapeutic philosophical perspective. We talk about happiness as if that is the purpose in life.
Right.
And I don't agree with that anymore. As lovely as it would be, life is inherently unfair. It comes with uncertainty. It comes with ups and downs. None of us know why we're here, and none of us know when we're going to die. And so I actually don't think happiness is what life is all about. I feel that embracing the reality of life is what we should be living for. And that is why we should never be affirming delusional thinking in other people, even if it makes them feel happy in the moment. It's not doing them any favors.
James ESSES is a psychotherapist. He used to work in law in the UK. He is now the founder of justtherapy.org, just-therapy.org. And I'm going to tell you about their code of conduct. It's one simple paragraph. But first, let me remind you to please subscribe to this podcast. Just hit that subscribe button. It's free of charge. It's not going to cost you anything, and you're going to make sure you never miss an episode. So click the subscribe, give us a review. Like us, all of that kind of stuff. It helps us stay afloat. And when we stay afloat, you get to hear interviews like this one that you may never have gotten to. Because James ESSES is a guy from the UK who we spoke to about what's going on at the Supreme Court right now, because gender ideology is a worldwide thing. And certainly in the UK, they are a little bit ahead of us in terms of the legality of puberty blockers, hormone blockers, or cross-sex therapy, all of those things. And James is a psychotherapist, and he said, look, a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists right now have the gender ideology woven into their practices. So if you take a kid who has gender dysphoria to one of these therapists, that therapist might push them into believing, you're right, you were born in the wrong body. So James ESSES started this justtherapy.org. Here's their code of conduct. I think it's hard to disagree with. The first step in pushing back against ideological capture in mental health care is to offer prospective clients a clear path to finding therapists who will stand up for and conduct their practice in accordance with non-judgment, neutrality, identity politics-free zone, evidence-based practice, exploration, not affirmation, resilience, and free speech. You're going to really enjoy this conversation, because what's going on at the Supreme Court right now could have a major impact on gender ideology, not only here in America, but worldwide. James ESSES is our guest next. James, so happy to have you with us. We were talking off camera about how this timing could not have been better, because we've got this really landmark case at the United States Supreme Court about these gender transitioning medical interventions for minors in the state of Tennessee. And obviously it could have ramifications for the entire country. But the UK seems to be ahead of the United States on this issue. And so I want to start there, just in terms of how the UK has evolved through this gender identity, this movement that seems to be this ideology that's sweeping the world, really, particularly in Western countries, and just how the UK has backpedaled a little bit.
Yeah, sure. And look, it's good to speak to you, Michelle. And you're right, the UK has been a bit of a beacon of sense, actually, over the last, I'd say, couple of years, as it started to reject wholesale the gender ideology that's kind of swept across the country. But, things were in a pretty bad place here not so long ago. Children being irreversibly medicalized, left infertile at a very young age, schools teaching, primary school age children that they may have been born in the wrong body, people such as myself having our livelihoods and our jobs cancelled and taken away from us because we dared to say that men couldn't become women. So, things have been pretty dark for some time, but it seems now as if we are starting to turn over a new page. I think one of the main reasons for that is that we had something called the Cass Review, which was a government-commissioned independent review into the impact of quote-unquote gender-affirming treatment on children. And this was conducted by an independent pediatrician who has worked with children for many decades. And the conclusion of the review was, as we suspected all along, which is that there is no solid evidence base to suggest that this type of medicalization is beneficial for children. In fact, it can actually cause serious harm. And off the back of that, the main gender clinic in London was closed down. The government put an emergency block on puberty blockers being available. And so that's the path that we're on at the moment. So things are looking good for us. But on the flip side, and I made a point of saying this after your recent presidential election, I'm quite jealous of the states, because Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are taking a very clear, coherent position against gender ideology. Unfortunately, our government in the UK isn't that way inclined. And in fact, our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, previously said that he believes that 1 in 1,000 women have a penis. So it's not all sunshine and roses over here, I'm afraid to report.
What made you want to stand up in this issue?
I was volunteering as a counsellor at a children's charity, and over time I had more and more children of younger and younger ages coming through saying to me they were born in the wrong body, they wanted to transition. And I was essentially being encouraged to affirm that notion, and I simply felt that I had to speak out against it. And at this time I was training in psychotherapy, and I thought of therapeutic ethics, and I didn't see why we would treat what is essentially a mental health condition with irreversible medication and surgery. That seemed to fly in the face of good ethical therapy.
There does seem to be pushback from some who are really entrenched within the ideology that, look, this is not a question of mental health. They are convinced, or they've convinced themselves, that these children really were born in the wrong body and want to transition. So how did the pushback impact you?
Well, I was kicked off my master's degree. I was 3 years into a master's degree in psychotherapy, and one day I received an email from the head of the school telling me that I was no longer welcome there, and I was expelled with immediate effect. And that was for simply writing a petition to the government asking them to safeguard these vulnerable children. So I've spent the last 3 years embroiled in litigation, which I just recently settled out of court. But it essentially threw my entire future life plans under the bus. And, I wish I could say I was the only one, but I know many people who've lost their jobs and their livelihoods over this.
I mean, that's what's so crazy to me about this, that we're talking about ethics. We're talking about whether or not, what the scientific ramifications of this are. We're talking about biology. We're talking about things where you can look at genetics and determine XX or XY, and you get booted out of school, expelled for petitioning the government about protecting children. That seems insane to me. And that's the thing about this ideology that I think really is alarming to a lot of people, that the extremism, the militant sort of attitudes behind it seem to be screaming, you will believe us or don't believe us at your peril.
Quite right. I've described it as a cult, and I'm not saying that simply to be inflammatory. If you look at what cults tend to involve, I think this ticks all of those boxes, and the almost religious fervor through which these people preach is really quite concerning, because essentially what they're saying is that if you don't believe in this ideology, you are in some way bigoted, you are a bad person. And the irony is that they don't even realize, they say things like, you must refer to us by the pronouns that we choose. But at the same time, they'll call anyone else cisgender. Right. And there's been times I've said to some of these ideologues, I've said, I don't believe in gender ideology, so please don't call me cisgender. And their response is, well, that's what you are.
Yeah.
So the hypocrisy, and they can't even see it. It's really quite worrying.
Yeah, it is. We had somebody else call it a cult. And her name is Laura Becker, and she's a detransitioner. She was abused as a child. She had some mental issues as a young sort of tweener, 12, 13. got confused, went to therapy, and within an hour, she was being prescribed puberty blockers. Cut 2 years later, they removed both of her breasts, and now she's on the other side of this saying, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to have children. And I'm heartbroken because now I just want to get married and start a family. So when I talk about them, the overarching people that are sort of behind this ideology say, oh, well, the detransitioners are in the minority here. They're just a very few of us. But in fact, I mean, look, you talk to LGBT groups and they say, look, so often these kids grow out of it, or they're uncomfortable during puberty, and so they're looking for a way to get rid of that discomfort and the euphoria they feel initially of being able to say, damn it, I am a boy, look at me go, ends up fading away, and the result on the other side is far worse. What are your findings about that?
Well, look, I mean, it's quite an intoxicating elixir, and I can see the appeal to a young person going through puberty as to why they might want to transition. I mean, let's think about it. Firstly, as you just alluded to, going through changes as part of puberty, particularly for young girls, can be very difficult. Yeah. And all of a sudden, someone's coming along and offering you a pause button on it, which children wouldn't that appeal to. Secondly, these children are being told that if they come out as trans, that will be celebrated and that it gives them this kind of unique identity in this new community. And for children who unfortunately have felt alone, haven't really felt much praise in their lives, haven't felt special, this gives them an easy pass towards unconditional universal celebration. And who wouldn't want that? And thirdly, we know what childhood rebellion is like. And I think this is the newest form of rebellion, because children can turn around not only to their parents, but also to their teachers, authority figures, and say to them, you must treat me as I demand that you do. And if you don't, you're going to get into trouble about it. Right. So I think it's really quite a powerful poison in many ways. But you're right. People do detransition at a much higher rate than is reported. And part of the reason for that is that most people who choose to detransition are not going to make a big song and dance about it. They're not going to go public about it. I mean, I'm trying to put myself in their position. And not only have they undergone potentially irreversible harm, both physical and mental, but they also have to acknowledge to a part of themselves that they got it wrong. Yeah. And even though adults encouraged and affirmed them down this pathway, they still ultimately made a decision to do this. And I can only imagine the shame, even the embarrassment that some of these young people feel through no fault of their own. So it's no surprise that they're not coming out and going public about this.
So every morning I wake up feeling like I slept better is a morning that I'm more convinced that sleep cream is the real deal. You guys, I've been telling you about Sleep Cream, CREME, sleep, CREME.com. This stuff, all I can tell you is I've been sleeping better because of it. I wake up feeling better. I know I've slept deeply and well through the night. So how does this work? How is a topical thing going to help you sleep better? You thought you had to take a drug or Ambien or melatonin? Well, I'm going to recommend this, and I'm going to recommend it also because it's guaranteed money back if you don't have success with it. Sleep Cream is a revolutionary new product. It's made of all natural ingredients with pure CBD crystals. And yes, you simply apply it to sensitive skin areas right when you get into bed. So I put it on my forearms, the insides of my forearms, insides of my elbows, bottoms of my feet. You will feel relaxed in a matter of minutes. That's what happens to me. And you get the best sleep you've had in years. I do. And as I said, it's guaranteed to work or your money back. No questions asked. I know what you're thinking. How can this cream help me sleep better? And again, I'm telling you, if you want an all natural way to sleep better, you got to try Sleep Cream. And maybe you've heard mixed messages about CBD, but I'm telling you, Sleep Cream only uses pharmaceutical grade pure CBD crystals with 0 THC. And it's made right here in the USA. It's not too good to be true. Try it for yourself. With its 100% money back guarantee, you've got nothing to lose. Go to sleepcream.com. That's sleep, CREME.com. Use the code GAMEDAY, all one word, when you're checking out GameDay, and you can get free standard shipping on your order. Are you ready for the best sleep ever? Sleepcream.com, sleep, CREME.com. I find a really interesting case to be that of Caitlyn Jenner, formerly Kris Jenner, the decathlete, the gold medal Olympian here in America. You know, at this point, she says, I knew I was trans from the time I was 7. But at that time, Bruce Jenner just went ahead through life. And certainly this was in another day and time. We're talking about the 70s and the 80s, and doesn't end up going through the full transition until, in the last 10 years, and much advanced in his life, her life, forgive me. And so, but that is when a person's brain is fully developed and they're able to make those decisions, and with the full awareness of what's ahead for them. So I don't understand, I'm very suspicious, let's put it that way, James, of why kids are being preyed upon in this way. And now we're starting to see some litigation being threatened against these doctors and medical professionals who really pushed these kids into this. Kids who can't drive yet, who can't drink, who can't vote, who can't live on their own, are making these life-altering decisions. And now it seems like the way to get back, or to maybe slow this down, is through these lawsuits, where you've been part of the legal process. What do you see there?
I think that's the only way, because as I said earlier, we're dealing with quasi-religious ideologues, and they're not going to change their tune, because even when they're presented with the facts and the evidence, I mean, there is no more obvious fact than the fact that sex is binary and immutable. And yet you present them with the science and they don't believe it. So I think the only way is essentially to force their hand through processes like litigation. But it's not easy. I can speak on behalf of the UK legal system and my own battle. It took years. It ended up costing in the hundreds of thousands of pounds. I had to crowdfund that money from the generosity of complete strangers. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to seek justice at all. It's a painful process, but I think that's the only way that these people are going to learn. Just going back to the point that you made around children versus adults. I mean, yes, this is the antithesis of child safeguarding. I mean, it's utter madness that a child may not be able to have a tattoo but can have their breasts amputated. Right. It's crazy. Right. But I mean, on the adults, I've actually changed my mind on this, in all honesty, Michelle. There was a point in the past in which I thought, I believe in freedom. As long as you're not harming anyone else, you should be able to do whatever you like if you're a fully grown adult. But from a therapeutic perspective, I do not see how it is appropriate to treat what is a mental health condition through medication and surgery. That feels wholly inappropriate to me. And on that basis, I don't believe that therapists nor doctors or surgeons should be offering any form of quote unquote medical transition to anyone, including adults.
Well, that is fascinating. So you are really distilling this to a mental issue. So let's just take that example of an adult. Let's say it's a 30-year-old, a male who wants to live as a woman. So you're okay with that person deciding to cross-dress, whatever kind of terminology you want to use. But in terms of the medical therapy, you think that's unethical?
Well, if we go back to the Hippocratic Oath and the notion of doing no harm, I just think this flies in the face of it. And look, there are other mental health conditions where we don't proceed on this basis. There's something called body integrity identity disorder. It's quite a rare condition, but it's where people reject parts of their body. They feel like they don't belong to them. And so someone might present to their doctor saying, I don't like my leg or my arm. It doesn't feel like it's a part of me. Can you amputate it? This is a real condition. There is no doctor, at least in the Western world anyway, that is going to perform an amputation on that basis, because to do so would be akin to grievous bodily harm. Completely unethical. This is no different. Someone coming to the doctor, a woman coming to a doctor and saying, I believe I was born in the wrong body. Can you remove my healthy breasts? It's no different as far as I'm concerned. We shouldn't be removing and amputating healthy parts of people's bodies.
Okay, I'm thinking out loud, so bear with me.
Sure.
What about a woman who has, let's say, enormously oversized breasts and she wants them reduced? Is that the same?
Well, in general terms, I'm not a fan of cosmetic surgery and the way that's taken off, but I view that as different, because there is a difference between modifying, even changing aesthetically the shape of something, versus removing an entire part of somebody's body altogether and them ceasing to have that function.
This is really fascinating. If you, I don't know how closely you've been watching the Supreme Court and the hearings here, but what is the right outcome, do you think? And I realize you're there in the UK. We've got a constitution over here that's our own. But you know, is this something that you think Tennessee as a state has the right to do, has the right to say, we are not going to alter a minor's body this way?
I do. And I wish that this could be done on a federal level. It doesn't. In fact, more than that, there needs to be change on a universal level, because it's a crazy scenario in which somebody can cross the borders into another state, and all of a sudden the notion of what is a man and what is a woman completely differs. We need universality about this. That's one of my concerns, is this. I spent all this time focusing on the UK, but the rest of the world is in absolute chaos about this. And I've been watching what's been going on in the Supreme Court with great interest and also great concern. I mean, I was watching an interview earlier with one of the lawyers from the ACLU, and she, it's a trans person, so I'm going to say she, put forward this notion that children from the age of 2 years old can know that they are transgender. I mean, that's
insanity. And I do recall, this won't come as a surprise, it was a San Francisco-based psychologist who said, yeah, you can tell, because little girls that pull the ponies out of their hair or the hair clips out are telling you they're a boy. And little boys who are wearing those snap-up onesies, who unsnap them and feel like they're wearing more of a dress, they're trying to tell you they're a girl. And I thought, no, what they're trying to tell you is they don't like the things in their hair and they want to just unsnap their thing. I mean, this is absurd. And it seems to me it's being delivered by people who have degrees. You know, she's a psychologist, whatever. So we're supposed to just take them at their word and say that these touchy-feely things are, oh yes, isn't that, you know, virtuous and right, and we got to be accepting and inclusive and all of this, when it sounds downright freaking crazy. And it's also fairly new, which makes me suspicious of all of it too, because we've gone through all of this time and suddenly this thing is just taken off like wildfire. What does that part of it tell you, James?
I think we've seen a complete inversion, actually, in the adult-child relationship. I think doctors and even teachers in schools, to some extent, view these children as customers, as consumers, and they're to be given exactly what they demand and as they want it. And similarly, with parents and their children, I think a lot of parents are quite fearful of their children, actually. I do a lot of research into these trans activist charities, organizations, and I've read materials, I've listened to podcasts where they've said to their child listeners, you know, if your family don't respect your pronouns, if they don't accept your new identity, forget about them. Come and join us. We'll be your new family. And I've spoken to many parents who've become completely and utterly estranged from their children because of this. So I think parents are very fearful that if they do or say the wrong thing, that it's going to destroy the relationship with their child. But this isn't a healthy place to be in when adults are fearful of children. We need to start to reassert some dominance. This doesn't mean not treating children with decency and respect and empathy, because a child who genuinely feels this way, it must be the most awful thing for them to be going through, and the confusion. But adults need to remain as adults, which is putting child safeguarding first and reminding themselves that these, at the end of the day, are just children.
Yes.
And a 2-year-old child doesn't know what they want for breakfast, let alone that they want to change their sex or gender. I mean, it's crazy.
It is crazy. I've heard people say, well, look, you want your child to be happy, don't you? Well, if my kids, when they were growing up, told me they wanted to be happy, it would be, can I eat Lucky Charms all day and sit here and watch TV? And I would say no, because that's not, I'm the guardian of you. You are my child. I love you. And this is not healthy. So I've thought about this. If my child came to me and said, I think I was born in the wrong body, I would say, let's start with this. Let's talk. And if we can't come to some sort of, over time, talking the two of us or as a family, let's seek counseling. Talk therapy would be my first go-to, because I would believe that something else was at play here. And what are we finding, James? You're certainly far more versed in this than I will ever be, in terms of the relationship between maybe autism and these cases of gender dysphoria.
Oh, significant overlap. A significant number of people presenting with gender dysphoria sit on the autism spectrum. And all of the main, at least in the UK, all of the main autism charities and support groups acknowledge this fact. But actually, they don't stop and think for a moment, should we be concerned about this? Because maybe certain people on the autism spectrum are more easily led. Maybe they see things in more black and white, and so they're more likely to experience these feelings of dysphoria. No, they don't say that. They come out with rubbish like people on the autism spectrum just know themselves better than everyone else. They're just that bit more unique, and so they're more willing to embrace their true selves. So that they're not joining the dots here between what's going on. But yes, not just autism, but also other comorbidities as well, internalized homophobia, previous traumatic experiences, bullying, etc. A lot of these coexist alongside gender dysphoria. So I always come back to the point that this is a mental health condition and should be treated as such, although a lot of the therapeutic bodies are trying to dilute down the definition of gender dysphoria altogether, which concerns me. You mentioned that if you were in this scenario, you'd go and seek talking therapy, but unfortunately, a lot of the therapeutic bodies and a lot of therapists I've encountered are fully captured by this ideology as well. In fact, I've just today launched a new therapeutic directory for UK-based therapists and for clients and parents to find therapists who are not simply going to unconditionally affirm their children down this medical pathway. It's very, very difficult to find, actually. Therapy courses are churning out a lot of quote-unquote woke therapists these days.
Where can people find that directory, James?
It's called justtherapy.org. At the moment, we've got UK-based practitioners, but I've had a lot of interest since we launched a day ago from people in America and Canada and elsewhere in the world. So we may look to expand that in due course. But I think it's necessary. I think essentially talking therapists need to be the first stage gatekeeper from allowing children to progress down these pathways. It's also interesting, you mentioned about happiness, which got me thinking from a kind of therapeutic philosophical perspective. We talk about happiness as if that is the purpose in life.
Right.
And I don't agree with that anymore. As lovely as it would be, life is inherently unfair. It comes with uncertainty. It comes with ups and downs. None of us know why we're here, and none of us know when we're going to die. And so I actually don't think happiness is what life is all about. I feel that embracing the reality of life is what we should be living for. And that is why we should never be affirming delusional thinking in other people. Even if it makes them feel happy in the moment, it's not doing them any favors.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by the increasing cost of health insurance? Have you had enough of not having control over your healthcare dollars? Introducing ShareRight, healthcare done the right way. At ShareRight, you're not just a number, you're part of a caring community, and you can forget about paying excessive premiums. With ShareRight, you stand to save 30 to 50% compared to health insurance. Think about what you could do with all those savings. But it's more than just savings. ShareRight ensures you have access to the care you deserve precisely when you need it, from routine checkups to unexpected emergencies. With ShareRight, your healthcare is their top priority. So empower yourself today by taking control of your healthcare costs. Visit shareright.org/Tafoya to learn more and see how much you can save. ShareRight, ShareRight.org/Tafoya. That's shareright.org/TAFOYA for healthcare done the right way. I agree 1,000%, if I can agree 1,000%. I realize that's not really a number, but you know what I'm saying, about that everyone thinks, I just want to be happy. But you said something a moment ago. You said life is inherently unfair. People are so loath to accept that. And I found that once I did accept that and understand that and make that realization, I was happier, because I could say to myself, I can deal with this now. This part of my life has been unfair. I've had other points in my life that I've had great luck. I feel those things sometimes balance, they sometimes don't, but not every day is going to be sunshine and rainbows. It seems to me the Stoics and the philosophers of centuries and millennia ago, James, understood that. And they understood how to deal with adversity and how to approach adversity and how to accept that adversity is part of life. And it seems to me that in this day and age, we're trying to shield children from any kind of discomfort or adversity that they may encounter. And that makes them dull and uninteresting and unhealthy, and I think unhappy in the long run.
I agree. And I think how boring would it be to just be happy all the time and to never have any drama or anything like that? And actually, when I experience negative emotions, when I've been through some issues, heartbreak or whatever it is in the past, I do try and actually feel grateful just a little bit for that feeling, because even negative feelings, it's a unique part of the human experience. And that's what we're here for. We're here for the journey. Children are being mollycoddled. They're being wrapped up in cotton wool. It's not good. I think social media has a part to play in this. And I think increasingly the young people of today are, I'm going to say narcissistic, certainly self-obsessed.
Absolutely.
Anyway. It's really quite sad to see, actually. I think I worry about the future generations. I'm not sure we can actually roll back from this in terms of the damage that's been caused by technology, by social media and all the rest of it. I mean, I look at even my sister. She's only 7 years younger than I am, but she grew up with all of this technology, and we've completely different dispositions in how we view the world because of that. And I walk down the street and I see children with their headphones in and their head stuck in a mobile phone. They can't communicate with each other, and I really worry, but I don't know what it's going to take to reverse this.
That's the million, billion, trillion dollar question. What is it going to take to reverse this? I wonder about that too, because I think deeply about what kind of catastrophe would it take to wake people up to the fact that this is so bad for us. And I agree with you. When people are just posting the best parts of their life on Instagram or wherever, and people are just scrolling and going, oh God, I wish I looked like that. Oh, I wish I could have that in my suitcase. I wish it's terrible. Now, we've had it before, but not so widespread. Like, magazine covers. Look, I'm a recovering anorexic. I was anorexic from the time I was 12 years old, and I don't think it ever leaves you. And I remember part of what influenced me so deeply was looking at magazine covers and saying, God, I wish I looked like that Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, and starve myself. And like I said, I'm recovering. It's still very much a part of who I am and how I live each day. And it's difficult, but I now look at it for what it is. And so we've had it with television. We've had it with film. We've had it with Hollywood, with magazine covers, but now it is just in everyone's hands 24/7. I think that's the difference. Is that your concern?
It is. And also the advancements we've made in society, which now allow people to essentially act on these anxieties, because historically, if somebody's feeling self-conscious about themselves or a part of their body, there's not necessarily a huge amount they can do about it other than try and change their mindset. Whereas now with the proliferation of cosmetic surgery, etc. I mean, I'm a member of a sports club here, and I genuinely think probably 80-90% of the people there have had work done. And I just find it, I find it interesting to note that, and the ease to which people are willing to go under the knife now for things that they don't like about themselves, and equally at younger and younger ages. And again, I wonder what message this is sending to the children of today when they're looking around and all of the adults around them have very clearly had work done. So I think that's an element of it. Similarly, when we go back to the gender dysphoria thing, historically in the past, young boy says he feels like a girl. There's not much to be done about it. Maybe could wear a dress if he so chooses. Now, with puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and the opportunities of surgery, all of a sudden people are being offered this silver bullet and being promised that this will kind of resolve all of the issues they've got. So I think it's in part just because of medical technological advancements as well. But I think mobile phones is a big thing. I saw that Australia the other day have passed a law essentially banning social media for children under the age of 16. There's some talk in the UK around banning mobile phones in schools, which I'm a big proponent of as well.
I agree. Yeah, and I'm not a big proponent of bans in general, but when it comes to kids and keeping them focused and keeping them, they're in school to learn, not to be on their phones. You don't let them take when kids were 50 years ago, kids couldn't walk into school with a transistor radio or a boombox. So why should they be able to walk into school with a phone that is equally as more distracting, I would say. And so, yeah, it's really interesting. This Australia law, it could be a precedent setter. Australia tends to be a little extreme in some of their bans and the way that they are trying to control their society to a certain extent. But on this one, it might be hard to argue. I mean, we're talking about kids' brains here. So that will be a test case. I'm sure people are going to study that. And so we can wait and see. I guess the last thing I would ask you, James, is if someone's listening to this podcast and they have someone in their circle who is going through this gender dysphoria, and what would you recommend to that person as to how to approach that whole situation?
It's a very, very difficult balance to strike, but I found the most helpful and beneficial is to try and combine empathy with reality. And it's perfectly possible to do both of these things. You want to make that person feel heard. You want to make them feel that you understand the turmoil, the struggle they're going through, and that you care about them and that you've got their interests at heart. At the same time, you want to affirm reality. And it's perfectly possible to say something like, I can hear how much you're struggling. I can only imagine what that's like for you, and I want to help you through this. But sex is binary and immutable. People cannot change their sex. And so that's, I think, a careful but compassionate way to go about it. I think talking therapy is a solution, but not the solution. And I also don't recommend just sending every child presenting with any mental health condition straight to a therapist, because that also is fraught with its own risks. And we've seen a huge increase in pathologizing children for essentially normal behavior. Children do tend to grow out of this stuff. If they're allowed to progress through puberty naturally, these feelings of dysphoria, by and large, will fade away.
And that is what studies have shown, correct? Yes. I mean, this is, I don't often just say, oh, let's refer to a study, but when we have people also coming forward and saying, I went through this too, and I ended up just being a tomboy, or it turns out I was gay, and I got through it. And I mean, puberty, I remember it, James. It's a hell of a difficult time for a female. That's all I can speak to. It's really tough. There's a lot of crap that's going on chemically in your body that's affecting your moods and your brain and all the rest. And so, we muddled through, and here I am. I'm a healthy woman today. But I mean, it does seem to me, and you said, you spoke to this earlier, that we are so attuned to oh gosh, this kid, we've got to do something for this child to make everything all right. And I understand that angst because I've raised 2 kids and all you want is for them to be okay. But sometimes that comes with some struggle.
Correct. And I think that's why we need to normalize these things. A young pubescent girl says to their mother they don't like their breasts, they don't like the way they're changing. That's pretty normal. Yeah. I'm sure most mothers would have felt that way when they were younger, and they can speak to that experience as well. We need to kind of get back to the stage of children appreciating that, puberty isn't particularly pleasant, but like everything in life, it will pass and they will move on and they'll forget that it even happened and they'll move on with their lives as happy and, most importantly, healthy adults.
James Esses, I hope people will go to your website, jamesesses.com. They can find the link to the Just Therapy directory. I'm so glad you're doing this, and I hope the numbers grow. And that's what I'm kind of. I think I'm seeing it. Am I seeing it? Am I seeing more people saying we got to get back to basics here, and we've got to take this ideology out of treatment, just normal psychological and psychiatric treatment, and just do therapy. Are you encouraged?
I'm encouraged by some. I think there's an appetite among some to kind of put forward a rebellion and to kind of push back against the ideological takeover of this profession. But we need more people to speak out. We need more therapists to join our forces, essentially. So if there's any therapists, counselors around the world listening to this, come and join the fight with us.
And we know we have listeners. I heard from some in the Netherlands and South Africa. So I know we have them out there. Spread the word. I think this is wonderful. James Esses, you've shown a great amount of courage and a willingness to do good. And that's about all you can ask of a human being these days. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Michelle.
He is James Esses. You can find him at jamesesses.com. Go check out his entire website. There's a lot there that is really, really useful and helpful. Be brave, do good. We will see you next time. Thrilled to have Steve Cleary from Sleep Cream with us. I've been so impressed by this product, Steve. It's good to see you.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
When you talk about sleep, people either get sleep or they don't. And and most people don't ever get as much as they want to. And it seems like almost an epidemic. So how did you guys come up with this formulation of a product that, no one's chewing on a gummy, they're not swallowing a pill? It's amazing.
I mean, that's right. I mean, a lot of people find it unbelievable. You can have a cream that helps you sleep. And you're right. I mean, from our studies, 2/3 of people struggle with enough sleep. And I was one of them. There was a time in my life where I was working all hours of the night. I was drinking at night and I couldn't sleep, so I'd stay up and I'd work and I'd drink and then I'd get hungry and eat. And that was a very bad combination. And I remember my wife telling me she was going to quit drinking for 30 days for Lent in our church. And my first thought was, not me. If I quit drinking, I can't sleep. But after a while I said, you know what? I mean, if I can't take a break for 30 days, that's really sad. So I did. I committed to completely stop drinking. The challenge was I stopped sleeping. And somebody had given me some CBD product and said, it'll help you sleep. And I tried it. And it did. It worked. And my wife was amazed. I mean, at first she said, it's because you haven't been sleeping for so much. And I'm like, no. I said, second night it worked again. Third night I put it on my dog, who was very anxious. And the dog slept. Seriously.
Oh my gosh.
A little Karen Terrier. And finally my wife tried it like the fourth night and she got a better night's sleep. The problem was, Michelle, is the product just made me sick. It gave me headaches. It had a greasy texture.
And you think that was because
I hated it.
So this was a CBD product. You didn't like the texture. Product. It was giving you headaches.
Yeah.
But you thought at least though the sleep part of it was working.
The sleep was working. I definitely saw a difference in my sleep pattern. So it's like, I have to have this, but I can't, use this product. It was making me more nauseated every night.
Mm.
So I was on the road with my wife. We came back and I was in Dallas, and I spent a Saturday going to every major CBD store in Dallas, and I bought their absolute best product I could find. And I talked to them about it. And I brought the product home, and some of it had a smell to it. Some of it had separated, and I just finally threw it all away. And my wife said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to make my own." And I started the research. And what I found is that CBD oil is very difficult in a topical cream because it has a smell. It has THC, which we don't want, right?
Right.
And it can be greasy. It can separate. It has a shorter shelf life. So I said, what am I going to use? And I discovered CBD crystals. CBD crystals are an isolated form of CBD. So it's a pharmaceutical grade. The CBD we use is 99.8% pure, and they're crystals. And then I found that if you shear them at a small enough particle, you can suspend them in a topical cream. And so we bought, researched and bought top equipment that actually uses nanotech. It actually shears the crystals to a nanoparticle. So it's silky smooth, and it suspended it inside a high quality hydrating cream.
You know what? That's amazing to me when I'm thinking about this, because you're right. We're talking about, I would never have known that there was a crystal, except that you've told me that there was a crystal in this lotion, because it is so silky smooth, and it goes on and it doesn't feel greasy, and it doesn't feel heavy, and it just goes on, and then you forget you even put it on. It's amazing.
Well, the cream we sell, and we work with a small boutique manufacturer that makes it for us. They sell that cream without CBD for $40 to $100 because it is a hydrating cream. And if you read the ingredients, it's made up of a lot of natural organic products. And so it has a high market value even before we add the CBD. The other thing we realized is people weren't using enough CBD. They were using 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams, 20 milligrams. Well, in research around the world, we were looking at research in Australia, looking at research in Israel. I get kind of a research nut when I get cranking on this. People say I'm a mad scientist, but I'm not. I just love really good research. And we researched this, and we found that you need to use 100 milligrams, not 25. And so we started putting, how much CBD could we get in 1 ounce of cream? And of course, the stuff that you're offering to your audience is 3,000 milligrams. And Michele, we're going to be coming out with a 5,000 milligrams. We found a way to do it. It's very difficult to put that much CBD inside the cream. But we have sent it to our friends and people who use sleep cream, and they're like, "This is unbelievable. I am sleeping like I've never slept before."
Okay, so I'm getting a sample of this soon too, right?
Did you not have one? We gotta send you some. And then my wife wanted a rose scent. So we're working on a rose scent. We'll have our lavender scent. We'll probably do a natural. But this 5,000 milligram is 10 times higher than what everybody else is selling in the quantity of CBD in the product. And the CBD is the most expensive product, so I understand why they don't want to do it. But we buy direct from the farm, and we're very, very specific of how we gather all our products. There's no middlemen. So, our product would retail for $200, $250 if we were comparable to other stuff in C-stores and gas stations. But we cut out all the middle people. We make it ourselves. And that's why we can offer it.
For people who are still they're like, oh, CBD, I don't know, putting that much on my skin, what's it going to do to me? And is it safe? And how do you reassure those who have the question marks about CBD to begin with?
Well, and those are fair questions, and people should be asking those questions, right? You just don't want to be putting something on that you don't know. And so our objective is to use the absolute safest procedures and safest administration of CBD, which is topical. You get people eating gummies, which I don't get, why would you eat a sugar gummy bear to help you sleep? And that's going into your digestive system. That's going into your liver. And there's been studies have shown that CBD and the liver don't really cooperate. They don't mix well. So a topical cream is very safe. Are there people who have had some issues? Very minor. And so some people have had issues with the lavender cream. It says their skin, they're allergic to lavender. And maybe they didn't know. And that may be 1 out of 100 people. And then we've had people that say, the CBD actually had a reverse effect on me. It added added in anxiety, but that might be 1 in 1,000 cases.
Okay.
But we want to be fully transparent that I believe it is safe to try. If you doubt, you can talk to your doctor and tell them what's in our product, and we encourage you to do that. And if it doesn't work, you call us up and you're going to get a refund. We're not going to ask you to send the product back. We're not going to ask you for pay shipping. We're not going to ask you to give a certain reason. We're just going to give you your money back 100%.
Yeah, I love being able to say that when I endorse the products, because this isn't like, well, send us back the unused part. No, just let them know, and you're in the clear. This is so informative, and I love this stuff, and I keep telling my audience about it. And I think the rose scent, because I did get a sample of that, is so nice. So I talked to you guys a lot in advance of this endorsement, and I had so many questions. I just love this stuff, and I can't recommend it highly enough. And so I think that being able to talk to you and pick your brain about this has been great for our audience to get a full understanding. And we'll do it again. We'll go next level the next time.
Maybe I'll bring some testimonies with me, because we've had amazing testimonies from your buyers from your show, Michele. I mean, there are a lot of people that listen to you that are buying sleep cream. Yeah. And do people call and say, it's not working for me, give their money back? Sure. But that's the reason why we can afford to do it, is because that's very few people do that.
Yeah.
Almost everybody who uses it loves it. If you subscribe, you get a really good discount. And so people are subscribing, they're using it. This has been a great opportunity to reach your audience, Michele. Yeah. And we look forward to talking to you more, sharing some testimonies, maybe doing some more on social media. It would be really fun. Sounds good. I will be proud to do it. Hey, thank you so much for your time. We will do this again. Again, folks, the website Sleep Cream, and that's CREME.com.